This program is for educational and informational purposes only and is not medical advice. Consult a healthcare provider before adding supplements to your diet. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. The products discussed are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Welcome to Feel Amazing Daily, the show that transforms your everyday routine into a powerhouse of positivity and peak performance. I'm Laura Smith, and for the next half hour, we'll be diving into the science-backed strategies, mindset shifts, and simple habits that successful people use to feel incredible every single day. Welcoming now Dr. Keith Ablow, America's psychiatrist, and nutritional biochemist Dr. Catherine Munoz. And now, Feel Amazing Daily.
Hi, I'm Dr. Keith Ablow.
And I'm Dr. Catherine Munoz. And today we're going to talk about something really interesting. That's herbs that we're very familiar with, and also talk about a little bit about mental wellness as well.
Well, we are, and I really like this topic because so many people suffer with low mood, and they don't need to suffer because there are natural supplements, naturally occurring herbs that can elevate mood. Most people don't have side effects. Of course, you talk to your doctor about this stuff before you start anything, right? That's like the disclaimer. But these generally don't have side effects. And I've always been concerned that people who might mention to their doctors, hey, I have low mood a lot of the time, could end up on an antidepressant, a prescription medicine. But if you don't have other symptoms of depression, that's really not appropriate. And these are alternatives.
Yeah, absolutely. So these herbs that we're going to talk about have been around for 3,000 years or so. But now, as science has evolved in so many ways, we're seeing that maybe the ancient people knew the secrets all along, right? So what are these two herbs that we're going to talk about?
Well, so time-tested things are pretty, much celebrated, appropriately so now. And these two herbs are called ashwagandha and bacopa. Okay, bacopa monnieri, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. If I'm not, people will have to excuse me, but I hope. But the two herbs I'm talking about, ashwagandha and bacopa monnieri, are part of a class of supplements called adaptogens. Adaptogens are not just things that lift you up. They're not things that simply bring you down if you're too elevated. They act as almost like a thermostat, right?
That's a great way to put that. It's not like a caffeine overload, and it's also not like a sleep aid or melatonin that will kind of bring you down. These adaptogens actually work with your body in certain ways, which we'll talk about, that help your body without caffeine or without melatonin, but you're calm, but you're not sleepy. At the same time, you're able to think really well.
So, right. So adaptogens aren't stimulants. They're not depressants, if you will. They are trying to maintain homeostasis, equilibrium. And that's an amazing thing when you think about that concept, because something that can regulate mood rather than simply jazz you up is very promising. It's the reason, by the way, that these two herbs are part of For Better Mood, our supplement with the number 4. I almost said the letter. The number 4, forbettermood.com. You can get these, and this will lift your mood. But again, the reason that these two herbs are there is not just to push you. It's in order to regulate things and bring things to equilibrium. And I want to get the word out because I just don't think that medical practitioners, by and large, still have embraced this holistic path. And that's why we started For Vita Health, the number 4, vitahealth.com, because I do want to bring mental health solutions to people that are not prescribed. You come from the world of drug companies, and you're not just a biochemist, but you've also been working within that industry. So I assume that you have those insights too.
Yeah, so who spent a long time in the pharmaceutical industry. There's some great medicines that are developed, but I think many people are looking for natural solutions now. And I think you're right. A lot of physicians still haven't embraced this, looking at to natural solutions first, as opposed to going to a prescription medication like, an antidepressant first off. Maybe try something that works naturally with your body instead of a chemical that, they can help and they're good in certain situations. And of course, always check with your doctor, but you may not need all of that, right? You may need something a little bit less.
Well, I'm a big proponent of a lot of, whether you like it or you hate it, what's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Psychiatry. And they keep coming out with new editions. Now they're on like 5 TR or 6, I don't know. New editions, 300 or more disorders. But when you look at major depression, it has many symptoms and signs. You have to have more than just low mood. That's just one feature of the illness, major depression. The supplement for better mood, number 4, better mood, is actually for just elevating your mood. We're not saying that this is for major depression, but there's millions of people out there who could use some help with their mood. So, what are these herbs actually doing? They're working with what's called the HPA axis, right? This is a neuroendocrine, really, part of the brain, and they're regulating it, they're bringing it to equilibrium. And we call it the neuroadaptogenic system. You and I talk about that. And so being adaptable is what people are really after. Everybody has stress in their lives. I haven't met a human who isn't dealing with something. If someone tells you, by the way, at a wedding or at a dinner, that's why I don't get invited as much to dinners now. If someone tells you everything's great, I'm always the guy saying, really? I don't know anybody for whom everything is great. We need to adapt to stress. Stress is endemic, epidemic.
And with your, what, 30 plus years as a psychiatrist on Fox News and Oprah, the Today Show, I think. So all of those, you're very well known in the field of mental health. So I imagine sitting next to you at an event might be a little bit challenging. Although I've sat next to you, we've had dinner together along with my husband,
You
and
survived.
we both survived. So there.
Your husband's okay. You're okay. But I do know after 30 years talking to thousands and thousands of patients and now working as a life coach and a consultant to people about their lives, their businesses, et cetera, that it usually only takes a couple questions in order to get to the heart of the heart. I say that intentionally, of the matter, because people, one of the beautiful things about people is their sensitivity. We're amazing creatures. Like, we have empathy for others. If you didn't feel things, then you couldn't empathize with other people and be of use to them and resonate with them. And so the flip side of that is that we're also vulnerable creatures. Stress bugs us. I mean, who doesn't have stress? Who isn't, sometimes in need of reassurance, of bringing things back toward equilibrium? Well, the good news is ashwagandha and bacopa
Yeah.
are ancient herbs that can help do that. And that's an amazing thing.
Should we talk a little bit about ashwagandha? Because, people, it's called the superhero. And, it's also actually in Sanskrit, which I wasn't aware of until recently. It means smell of a horse, which there's no
Right.
way I'm taking that, right?
Right.
But it's not because of the aroma. It's really because they thought that it would bring the vitality and the power of a horse. So,
And and warriors used it. They felt that it gave them power, strength. And, one of the things about stress is it can make you feel weak because we have not unlimited reserves physiologically. And in terms of what we call this neuroadaptogenic system, it's not unlimited. So if you're constantly burning the candle at both ends because you have an incredible level of stress and you're just trying to stay at equilibrium, then that takes a lot of mental power, takes a lot of neuroendocrine power to try to stabilize the ship. Ashwagandha is like a shock absorber, and you can channel more strength, I believe, because your brain and mind are not busy just trying to keep you even.
Maybe I should take some For Better Mood now because I'd love to have that strength. But I think it's also called Rasayana.
I'll go with that. Let's go with that with Rasayana.
Rasayana, and which in Ayurveda, and they call it the fountain of youth.
Well, there
Who
you go.
knew?
And there's every reason to think that, because what happens when you're under stress, you can release tons of cortisol. Cortisol is important, by the way. You have to be able to release it, because otherwise you'd have something called Addison's disease. You wouldn't be able to cope with stress at all. However, when you're under a lot of stress, or when you register it a lot, you can easily release too much cortisol, and ashwagandha reduces that. And that is tremendously important. It can reduce it 30%. So this isn't subtle. Some things are subtle. This is not a subtle thing. 30% is not 3%. So if you're reducing your cortisol level by 30%, a third almost, that's very meaningful. And it registers with your entire neurophysiology, your endocrine system, et cetera. And it can leave you feeling like, okay, I can deal with this. And I think that's just incredibly important.
I know a lot of people who take ashwagandha for, in our For Better Mood supplement, we have ashwagandha in there as one of the key ingredients, but we also have other ingredients in what we call, and others call, the blended supplement that really takes ashwagandha. And we're going to talk about Bacopa minori, but it also has other adaptogens in it, as well as a few other amino acids and things that, when they're combined together, they, work better, we hope, than just a single supplement. And that's the real science behind it, is creating that blended supplement where all the ingredients are working in combination together, instead of trying to take a single supplement, which is.
Well, there are four things I like, at least four, about For Better Mood and all of the For Vita Health, number four, bettermood.com, forbettermood.com supplements. And that's where the number four comes from. These are all natural. They're made in America. They're made in FDA registered facilities, and they're backed by science. And there's a money back guarantee. That's five. But in any case, they're backed by science, meaning you don't want to take things for which there's no data. So the only ingredients that go in For Better Mood are ones where there are lots of scientific studies suggesting this can work. Again, you talk to your doctor, but there are lots of scientific studies suggesting that this can work. Ashwagandha is one of those things that you wouldn't think something called ashwagandha, that is 3,000 years old, that if you talk to 100 people, a fair number of them would say, yeah, I know someone who took that. That works. This is something that works for a lot of people.
Can we talk a little bit more about cortisol? Because, some people may think, oh, how do I know that I have high cortisol level? What does it feel like? Well, we're not really sure that you can feel it in some ways, but one of the signs, and this is a lot of science has gone behind this, is if your eye twitches. That's one of the signs that you might have a high cortisol level. And so if people notice, they think they're at the computer and it's just staring at the computer too long, and it could be. But also, if your eye starts switching and you're sitting at a computer on, on a crazy phone call with the boss or something, you might check for your eye twitching. But are there any others that you're familiar with?
Well, I think, the way that the body works is that if you use too much cortisol, release it, secrete it way too much, your cells are going to become insensitive to it. So one of the real signs is feeling like, man, I can't cope with stress at all. I've burned out my adrenal glands, right? And so it's like a lot of things. If your body needs to release tons of insulin, what's going to happen? Your cells are going to become insensitive to insulin. You're going to be insulin resistant. In terms of your cortisol and this neuroendocrine system, neuroadaptogenic system, as we call it. If you're constantly under stress and you're releasing tons of cortisol to try to cope, eventually it won't work, right? And so you need to modulate that and bring it to equilibrium, hence ashwagandha. Now, For Better Mood has another key ingredient, which I think is incredible, by the way, called Bacopa monnieri. Again, we're going back thousands of years. It was called Brahmi, named after Brahma, the Hindu creator god of creativity and intellect. It's almost unbelievable that these things find their way into this broadcast, right? After thousands of years, and that somehow we would be waking up again to the notion that, hey, maybe it's not a prescription antidepressant for everybody, and certainly not for people who only have low mood.
Right, exactly. So it's interesting that you bring up Brahmi and because what I understand, and we have some friends that are monks in a monastery up in the hills in New Mexico, and they're just amazing people. And so they memorize the Bible,
Hmm.
but they memorize it in Latin, and all their masses are in Latin. And so I asked her, how in the world do you remember all this? And they have very clean diets because they fix all their own food, they grow all their own food for the most part. And how do you do this? And they've actually told me that they use things like bacopa and other herbs as part of their diet. They grow them sometimes. Some of them they can grow. And
Um,
so to me,
that's
that's a
amazing.
testament. Yeah.
Well, it is. It's amazing. I mean, as a testament to Bacopa's own adaptability,
Yeah.
it grows underwater.
Like how?
Like, how does it do that, right? I don't know the answer to that question, but it does. And I think it's interesting symbolically as a metaphor that sometimes we feel that way. I don't want to draw out the metaphor too far, but sometimes you feel like you're underwater. And really something that can improve your stamina, improve your mood, improve your focus. That's all natural. We're not aware of severe side effects. Again, you check with your doc and all that.
Yeah.
But combining Bacopa with ashwagandha in For Better Mood, the number 4, bettermood.com, forbettermood.com, gives synergistic effects. And they're not the only two ingredients, there are others. But the exciting thing really is that we're learning that these things affect neurotransmitters. So, what are neurotransmitters? They're the chemical messengers in the brain that one nerve cell releases to communicate with the next nerve cell. If you don't have enough serotonin, or the balance isn't right between serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine and all these different chemicals, it contributes to low mood. And what we know is that Bacopa can affect both dopamine and serotonin. These are two major neurotransmitters in the brain. So there's molecular evidence for why this works. It's not black magic. There's right. You are in fact a biochemist and a nutritionist, and so a PhD nutritionist. So you understand these things better than I would even.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that, but I do know that because I worked in the multiple sclerosis area for quite a while, and we used to describe what happened in multiple sclerosis was that, think of it as a wire on a phone cord, or when we used to use cords, or a telephone line, and when that telephone line gets cut, even nicked, that's similar to what happens when your brain isn't thinking. So those neurons aren't firing, they aren't able to cross the wire to the other side because it's
Yeah.
been cut. And so we have a cut nerve or a cut neuron, it gets what we call spliced, and then they can't communicate. And that's kind of what happened when your brain isn't wired right related to your mood, or if you feel like you're thinking slow, you have brain fog. It's sort of the same thing. And so you need something to help you go in and fix those wires so that those, what we call synapses or areas, can communicate together on the telephone wire, right? So
Yeah, that's a great
yeah,
analogy.
so that's kind of, a pharma example from a different disease state. However, it operates the same. Those brain waves, the neurons, they fire things off. And if the hormones aren't right, if the chemistry isn't right, they're just going to get mixed up.
I want people, I really do. I want people to avail themselves of things that work and avoid things if you can that are going to cause you bad side effects. And unfortunately, sometimes prescriptions do that. This is a new day. The word has gone out. Natural supplements can be incredibly powerful. Whoever said that they couldn't be was kind of lying or uninformed in the past, because the data shows, some studies show that if you combine, as we have in For Better Mood, if you combine ashwagandha and bacopa, you can reduce anxiety by 50%.
Yeah.
Again, this isn't a rounding error. 50% is by half. We can cope with, lots of people can cope as long as their anxiety is reduced by half. It's not 5%. And I take For Better Mood all the time, and I notice a big difference. Why would I not if clinical studies show a reduction of 50%?
Yeah.
That's pretty dramatic.
It is. And those are, taking ashwagandha at a specific dose and bacopa at a specific dose. But when you start also combining the blends that we have in For Better Mood, you do get, I think, a more balanced approach as opposed to just taking the two supplements alone in higher doses. Because you don't want to
Yeah.
take too much of anything. Too much of a good thing can cause a problem too.
Well, that's absolutely true. And this is like a curated solution. So what did we do? And by the way, you find the supplement you want to use, is the way I look at it. We happen to have For Better Mood, ours, but go find one. Try the one that fits for you. As long as you use something that works, great. But we have included other helpful herbs in For Better Mood, like rhodiola and L-theanine. And if you look these things up, rhodiola and L-theanine are both very celebrated for their effectiveness. But when you put them in as ingredients with others, you get synergy between all of them. And that's what we want to have happen.
And this is true science. Like you said, it's not voodoo magic or something like that, because each of the ingredients in blended supplements, and including ours, For Better Mood, they work together in specific ways. It's not like we just threw them all together and said, this sounds like a great combination, kind of like what I do in the kitchen sometimes.
Well,
this looks like it
there you go.
might taste good. No, they're studied. There's reasons why we combined them in the way that we did.
And we did. And so, for folks who want to try our solution, you go to the number 4, bettermood.com. You can also visit forvitahealth.com and see the other supplements that we have to offer. The number 4, always, by the way. And there's a money back guarantee, because we don't want to take anybody's money for whom we haven't helped. This is a new day. This is a day when we can literally say, hey, let's access every powerful thing from nature that we can in order to improve ourselves as human beings. Bacopa, ashwagandha, and rhodiola and L-theanine, which are in For Better Mood, are one of the roads to do just that.
And when you think about it, and I'm sure you've thought about this before, but why do supplements balance the way they do? So, for example, why does ashwagandha combined with bacopa moneri? It's because one reduces cortisol, stress, right? The other one boosts serotonin, right? So you get basically, a double, not a triple yet, but you get a double if you were playing baseball. And then the
There you
triple comes
go.
when you start adding more small amounts in the supplements. Then you get the home run when you know how to blend them right.
Well, I hope people feel like we, batted in a few runs today. We're looking forward to next time. Thank you for joining us. And of course, feel amazing every day.